Welcome to Khmer Voices, where we shine a spotlight on the achievements of the Cambodian diaspora around the world. I'm your host, Vani, aka Vanny. We're back! It feels a little off to say Happy New Year with all that's happening in the world, but nonetheless, that's what I wish for you. A happy and peaceful 2026. Thanks for your patience as I took some time off over the holidays. 2025 has been good to me personally with this podcast and for the nonprofit that I co-founded at Cambodian Cultural Center. But wow, it was a heavy one for our community to process with the border conflict and just seeing the injustices happening. And we all know members of our community aren't exactly safe in the U.S. either these days. I nearly talked myself into postponing releasing my first episode of 2026 as, I'm just starting to feel the heaviness lift ever so slightly. It's just after midnight on January 13th, 2026 as I record this, and I promise I'd be back mid-January, so here I am. Also, I really want you to meet the guest on today's episode, Silong Chhun. He's been involved in and is doing incredible work, and what we talk about is timely with current events in the U.S. From Cambodia to arriving in the U.S. as refugees, to growing up in the hood, to now serving as the digital communications specialist in the Office of the Attorney General of Washington State. In this episode, Silong shares it was his curiosity with the arts, music in particular, that kept him out of trouble and paved his path. He's also a dedicated community advocate, co-founder of the Khmer Anti-Deportation Advocacy Group, and co-founder of the award-winning comedy production company C Comedy Collective. You may already know Silong, particularly if you're from Washington, but I trust you'll find this conversation worthwhile, and if you're not ready to be inspired, then you're listening to the wrong podcast. Enjoy.
I was born in Cambodia. I was born in Battambang, a village called Pum Savai Sa. It was, I really, don't know what the province is, but, my mom just said I was born in Battambang. But I was born, in 1979. As you know, the Vietnamese troops ousted the Khmer Rouge on September 7th, 1979. And 5 days later, I was born. And when I was born, my mom was actually on her way to the refugee camp in Thailand. So I was born en route. It's just quite the miracle that I survived, and thank to my mom who carried me through the jungles, not just ducking Vietnamese and Khmer Rouge soldiers, but also landmines and just the natural elements that could have killed her. And I was malnourished when I got to the camp, and just pretty crazy story. And I'm just fortunate to be here. Now I'm 46 years old, healthy, raising a family here in Tacoma, Washington.
How long were you in the camps?
2 years, because I was born, right? I didn't get to the United States until 1981. We settled here in Tacoma, the Puyallup, Tacoma area.
Mm-hmm. And I think in previous podcast episodes, not mine, but in other podcast episodes you've been on, you mentioned that you felt very lucky that you actually had family here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was really fortunate because my family on my dad's side, my dad's sister actually married to, a really not a wealthy family, because, this class structure in Cambodia, they were in, I wouldn't say the upper class, but the upper middle class in Cambodia. And they were able to come actually settle in the state of Washington before the Khmer Rouge took over because they got wind of what was going to happen. So they were here for several years laying a foundation. I was really fortunate to even have both of my parents when we, came here as refugees. But, it wasn't an easy route because my dad was part of the Lone Nose soldiers, right, what the Khmer Rouge was targeting. So he had to escape first. So really it was my mom, me, and she hired a couple of other individuals to kind of, get us through the border. But, we settled here. And unlike a lot of my peers, a lot of my colleagues that I grew up with, we had a really solid foundation. Family was already settled, already had jobs at the farm. So, when we first came here, we had a place to stay. We had jobs waiting for us. So it wasn't as difficult as what I've seen what my friends and other family members has went through. So, just extremely lucky to have that foundation built when we came here.
So your family was already there. Was there already a strong Cambodian community there, or was it just starting to
No,
build?
they No, yeah. The first, we're actually celebrating the 50th anniversary of the first Southeast Asian refugees to come to the state of Washington. So the first Vietnamese family came in 1975. So we're celebrating 50 years of that this year. But it wasn't a lot of Cambodians. But you go where your family is, and my family was here, and they had this work here. We worked on the farms. We weeded the cucumber fields, harvest strawberries and dill pickles around here. So it was, because my parents, our family were farmers too. So except for the climate and the weather, it's very similar to growing up in Cambodia for them because, they were farmers back then. So I think assimilating in that manner wasn't too difficult. But, learning the language and navigating these systems that were designed to even accommodate us was a huge, huge challenge for my family and I.
Did you participate? Did you help your family in the fields as well?
Yeah, that's how we earned our school clothes. Being in fifth, sixth grade, you wanted the coolest shoes. You don't want to go to because we had generic shoes called Pro Wings. When it's just lower income folks, we didn't want, and kids were brutal back in the
I
day. That
remember.
you get made fun of. Yeah, people if you were poor, they knew you were poor. You get made fun of being poor. But what the funniest thing was, we grew up in the hood, so we were all poor. Yeah, but we did participate. It was really my first job. I don't want to put the farms on blast, but I was like 9 or 10, weeding the fields, preparing the fields for harvest in the summer. So it's a great opportunity to earn and learn the grit of hard work and just earning. Because I worked all summer for one pair of shoes. My parents would buy me the rest of the clothes because
Aw.
shoes was the most important. But it's a good experience, and the hard work and grit that our families went through. And from me being 10, 11, 9, all the way to my teenage years, it was a every summer activity. But it was just a really fun experience. It was all my friends and my cousins because our community here was really small. Like we all were concentrated on the east side of Tacoma and Salishan, which is with the projects where they placed us. So we would all gather in the shuttle in the morning and go to the farm, work all day, come home, and it's community. It is really a community based like activity, and the best part of it, it wasn't just Cambodians; it was everybody. Vietnamese. We had a lot of Ukrainian, Samoa. You know what I'm saying? Like it was really diverse.
Oh wow! So at the farm, it wouldn't
Hmm.
just be Cambodians. Like you didn't have your own
No,
crew. Oh wow! That's
yeah,
something different from Ontario. I grew up in Ontario, and that what you just explained, it's something that I experienced as well. Because
yeah,
I didn't find it very. I didn't find. I thought it was hard work. Yes, it was. You're tired at the end of
it
the day, but
was.
it was fun because you're joking around with everyone while
Yeah.
you're picking the strawberries, and uh, everyone's sharing their lunch too. So it's
Hmm.
very
Hmm.
communal, and um, you found joy
It's
in
just a
that.
fun. Yeah, I was gonna say that. It was a very fun environment. There was a lot of joy. We were happy,
Hmm.
because we didn't know any better. I mean, the work was grueling.
Hmm.
By 10, 11 a.m. in the summertime, the sun would just be just on your
Right.
back, and
Yeah.
you take a
So
break here and there. But
yeah, the
mhm,
difference is that we tend to just kind of be in our own community, like our own
mhm,
ethnic group. We never
yeah,
really uh, on the farms. It would be like the Vietnamese would be on a different farm,
mhm,
and the Cambodians would be on this farm. But yeah, very cool
yeah, not
to hear
here.
that. Oh,
Yeah,
that's awesome.
it was all diverse, super diverse, man. I worked a lot with a lot of Ukrainians back in the day too.
Hmm. So
This is
did they
my
learn some
first
Khmer words from
experience.
you?
Yeah, we both learn from each other. I'm not good at it, but I learned how to say "don't take the cucumbers home" in Ukrainian. But I wouldn't say I'm not going to say it now. I'm butchering the whole language.
Well, can you tell me what the makeup was like growing up in Tacoma?
Yeah, on the east side of Tacoma, the makeup of the demographic was
Hmm.
super diverse. It was my first time seeing a black person coming, to the United States, where I'm just surrounded by Asians. And when you go through the immigration process as a 2-year-old, you don't see many colored people. It's all white people,
Yeah.
taking your photos, filling out your documents. And when I came to Tacoma, we settled. It was the first time I'd seen a black person. I remember Gloria Parker. I sat next to her in kindergarten. And then first time I met a Samoan, I had a Laos friend. So I grew up with so many different backgrounds, and our economic background was the same, but everybody had their own stories. And growing up in an environment like that, we don't see ourselves as diverse. We just see ourselves as friends and human beings, and we were just not really different. We just kind of grew up in the same environment, but they had a different background here and there. So that's my first experience in the United States. I just remember being so diverse, and it was my first time seeing like white people, black people, Samoan, just people outside of Cambodians. Because I was 2 years old, in a refugee camp, and it came here. I remember having my first Snickers bar when I got off the plane. The first time I've ate anything that sweet, and it just changed my life.
It wasn't too sweet.
No, I love that shit, man. Growing up, I always had a sweet tooth, but not anymore.
I'm curious to
But
know.
yeah.
You mentioned that the kids were brutal about being poor, even though everyone else is poor. So you grew up in a diverse
Yeah.
neighborhood. Were
Hmm.
you picked on with regarding to language, like how you spoke,
Yes.
even
Yes.
though everyone else was an
Yeah.
immigrant?
Hmm. Hmm. I mean, you get made fun of by the Lao folks, the Vietnamese folks, even the own Cambodian folks, because when you're going to school, you're trying to figure out what the standards and what the norms are. And when you live in the United States, the standard and norms back in the day, you kind of it's kind of set to white people. So you kind of that's the bar, right?
Yeah.
So I would get made fun of not speaking English well. I didn't speak English till I was in the third or fourth grade. We had
Really?
our yeah, I didn't understand the language until like I was in the third or fourth grade. And every time English period would come around in elementary school, they would send us to a separate class, which they call it ESL, English as a Second Language. I don't know what it was
Yeah.
called in Canada, but now we call it English Language Access,
Mm,
because English is not somebody's second language. It can be their fourth or fifth language.
right.
So there was a lot of things that the United States had to learn, accepting all of us refugees.
Wow. I'm surprised then that you didn't learn English until third or fourth grade, especially because
Yeah.
you were around other kids that don't speak Khmer. Like, how did you communicate
Hmm.
with kids in, grade one, grade two?
Yeah, grade one, grade two is really difficult. Very difficult. I watched a lot of Saturday morning cartoons. Cartoons was a big help. We have Sesame Street here in the States where I watched a lot learning. But communication is interesting because you don't really have to understand the language verbatim, but you kind of get the message, right? Even when you're traveling these days, when you go to a country where you don't speak too much Spanish or French, you kind of get to understand. But
Mm, hmm.
uh, I don't remember having a translator in class at all, but I remember, it was hard. It was hard, especially I remember the most anxiety I would get is when the teacher would call on me to read out loud in classroom. I would just break
Oh,
down because, first of all, I don't speak the language. Second, I don't know what I'm reading, and I don't,
right.
so I've learned um, going through that experience, being English as my second language, I really, really tried really hard. I became a really good speller. I became a really good speller, and then I really just figured out how to read. But then when I learned how to read, I didn't understand what I was reading. So comprehension took me a bit too until like my middle school, even high school when I started being assigned essays and how to write that in English. So
Uh,
I studied really hard to try to grasp the language. So yeah,
so your primary years were difficult in terms of not really understanding the language. What about
yeah.
middle school? What was that like?
Oh man, middle school to me, I did really well in school. I attribute that to my parents being strict and just being there for me when they could. But it was a lot of the biggest challenges I had is my identity, trying to figure out who I was, how I fit into this environment that I've been put in. Because I went to a school called McElvey Middle School on the east side in the 90s. Crime rates, gangs, drugs, prostitution, everything the stereotypical ghetto in America that you see in the movies was really, you could get a sense of what was happening in this neighborhood at that time. We were one of the highest murder rates in the 80s and 90s due to all the gangs. And
Really?
there's Cambodian gangs, there's Samoan gangs, black gangs, Latino gangs, all around Tacoma, and it was concentrated in where I grew up. So that was one of the challenges. I was fortunate enough to discover skateboarding, and I can't fight, so I was kind of useless to like the gangs. Seriously, yeah. And I was a very sensitive kid, so I cried a lot, and I just got lucky that I had both parents who kind of kept me away from the gang violence. But all of my friends till this day were all part of that environment, and
Wow. How did they
I
keep
was
you
able
away? How did
to,
they keep you busy and distracted
yeah.
from that?
Well, I was into music, right? My dad would save up enough money to buy me a keyboard, so I would sit in my room and try to make music all day after school. He would keep me busy in sports. He bought me a skateboard. Anything that I wanted to do to keep myself busy and not hang out with my friends, he would, find a way to get it to me. So I started skateboarding when I was in middle school.
Yeah.
Hung out with the white crowds because skateboarding and minorities, people of color, those two cultures wasn't integrated like they are today, right? Back then, skateboarding was punk rock, white scene. So I started skateboarding, started playing guitar because I had older cousins who played guitar, very musically inclined family, and I was in a band, so that's what kept me busy.
Wow.
All my friends back then too, who were still my friends till this day, used to call me a sellout, right? I want to be white because I was skateboarding, but that was just part of the things that you get through. I didn't like reject what they said. It's like I wasn't interested in gangbanging. It's not that I wasn't interested. It's I was useless in that space. But
Wow.
that doesn't say that I wasn't affected by it, right? I had a friend when I was a freshman in high school who was shot during a drive-by. Um, we would walk home luckily I've never been jumped. We would walk home from school just to go to our house. We would walk in a group because if you walk alone, you get targeted, either by any gangs that you're not in. Either they try to recruit you or they assume that you're in a different gang,
Yeah.
right? So just being safe and, getting beat up or getting bullied was really a common thing. Just for me, I've been fortunate enough to not really experience an extreme bullyism where it took away my self-esteem and self-confidence.
I didn't know this about Tacoma, Washington
Hmm.
in general, until I listened to some of the episodes that you were on, because you hear a lot
Hmm.
about Long Beach and the
Yeah,
gang
yeah.
problems there, but I didn't realize that it spread all the way to Washington too.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
were the gangs like grouped ethnically, or did you have
Hmm.
were they mixed as well?
It it was mixed. It was regional, but ethnically mostly. Up here, we had the OLBs, Oriental Local Bloods, then we had the Locked Crips, which is Crips, but they were both Asian gangs.
Like, are they still
Um,
around, or is it a past
No, there's,
a thing of the past
I'm
now?
so far removed from that. I don't know
Uh-huh.
if they're still around. There might be, remnants here and there, but a lot of the OGs are, grown adults, either in jail or they're raising families and just doing great in life. But yeah, the gangs, if you look at Long Beach and any inner city community where Cambodians were placed, the gangs I think was inevitable. It's just the way their environment was kind of helped shape that because I don't believe my friends who were in gangs who were gangbanging by choice. It's just one of those environmental pressures that you're raised in this environment. You want to be accepted. You want to feel respected. You want to find a family. You want to find a group that will help protect you and make you feel seen, right, and valued. This is
Hmm.
what they gravitated towards, right?
Yeah,
Because they didn't get it at home, right?
but
And when you come to
parents are
school,
too
you're being
busy
bullied.
working, trying to
Yeah,
survive.
yeah,
Yeah, and they're
yeah.
looking for
And
guidance and connection. Yeah, it
yeah,
makes
and there's a
total sense.
generational gap too. There's
Hmm.
a generational gap and a communication gap. Like to this day, I find it really hard to communicate with my mom on certain topics, because just the level of understanding and perspective and what was taken away from her, and
Hmm.
she there's a lot that there's the generational communication gap between kids and their parents back then was so wide that it was lost.
Hmm.
So
You know, I,
yeah.
I just want to go back to the point that you made about when inner city kids and when you have like a concentration like that, it's inevitable. And I do see it. Even though the population in Ontario,
Hmm.
Hamilton is where I grew up, it was smaller, but we had gang problems too, but maybe not to the extent that Long Beach or Tacoma had it. Like I don't
Mm-hmm.
remember drive-by shootings or anything, but there was
Yeah.
gang affiliation, and my parents were, they feared that I would get into the wrong crowd and hang out with the wrong people
Mm-hmm.
and get hurt. And I know that in BC, I moved to BC when I was an adult. So I don't
Mm-hmm.
know what it was like growing up here, but from the stories I've heard, there were problems with gangs in Vancouver as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just the environment that creates those situations where you kind of have to do it to protect yourself, right?
Yeah.
You imagine being 7, 8, 9 years old, going to school and just getting bullied and made fun of every day by different groups of ethnicities. I mean, at a point, I know in Tacoma there it used to be a black and Asian thing, right? Because
Wow.
on the east side of Tacoma is where most of the Bloods were Cambodians, Laos, Vietnamese, because Vietnamese had their own gangs, right? And then the Hilltop, which is just it's where the Crips are, and that's where a huge black population used to live in the 80s and 90s, and these two neighborhoods will be at odds with each other,
Yeah.
for like 10, 15 years.
So music sort of saved you.
Yeah, the art saved me, man. Music. I pursued music as a kid. I was in a band in middle school, band in high school. Started off listening to like Pearl Jam. Grunge was huge in the '90s in
Mm-hmm.
Seattle, and I was taken by that wave. And Nirvana was huge, Pearl Jam, Soundgarden. I listened to all of that stuff, but I also listened to the Smiths, The Cure, which wasn't really typical of being a Cambodian kid in the
Yeah.
hood, right? But I gravitated towards hip hop when I was in high school. I discovered Wu-Tang Clan when I was a freshman, and it just changed my life. So I've pursued music ever since. And me pursuing music kind of led me on the path where I am today. I went
Yeah.
to school for audio production and met so many people, just opening up a network that really I never knew that was even didn't even
An option.
exist. Because
Yeah.
growing up in the hood, you go to school, your parents tell you to go to school, but they don't tell you to go to school what for. Like,
Yeah.
what's
Yeah.
out
Like
there,
guide me in some way, but yeah, there is no
Yeah,
guidance
yeah,
there. Well, they're
yeah. So I went
navigating
to
it too for the very first time.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, and me pursuing music really led me on the path to where I am today. I wanted to do anything within the music business
Mm-hmm.
and the music industry, so I went to a local community college here called Green River Community College and enrolled into the broadcast communications program. So I was in I did radio, I did overnight radio DJing for, 2 quarters there, and one of my teachers listened to a recording that I made. He said, "Man, Salon, you're so good at recording. You should consider the Art Institute of Seattle." I'm like, "What's that?" He's like, "Oh, it's a music producing school." I'm like, "See, I never heard of anything like
Wow. Yeah,
that."
you're
So I
lucky that you
transferred
got
that.
a teacher that pointed that out to
Yeah,
you and
yeah,
noticed your
yes,
talent.
right. And I shout out to Campy, Jim Campman. He was a huge radio personality back in the day. Passed away a few years ago, but yeah, that's my biggest introduction to I can go to school
Uh-huh.
to do this because I
Uh-huh.
was doing it already, right? I was making beats, we were recording rap songs with my friends and my cousins at that time, high school, early college, and then
Have
we
you ever
dropped an
released
album in
them?
'05.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'll send you some Spotify links.
Yes, please.
Yeah, we dropped an album in '05, and the album's called The Second Language because
Uh-huh.
we think that music's everyone's second language, right? Because music is something that you might not be able to speak, but when you hear it and you feel it, it really resonates with you, and it's all about energy. So our album's called Language Arts. Music, our group name was called The Second Language. I'll send you that album. It's on Spotify right now.
Uh-huh.
And that album really opened the door to the network that I have. Like I have a worldwide network because of this one album that we dropped in '05. Like I can go to the East Coast, New York, and Philly, and Boston, and people know me from that album. So I'm able to use these
Amazing.
networks that I've made throughout my tenure in pursuing music to kind of doing what I'm doing today.
Hmm.
I can connect and do, like in 2017 we did a candlelight vigil, like an international first one, and it's because of me pursuing music. I was, that set me on this path of service and just meeting people and widening my network.
Yeah. So, who did you look up to in the music scene then?
Yeah, I was a huge fan of Quincy Jones,
Uh-huh.
the RZA, Wu-Tang Clan's producer, and Mobb Deep. A huge fan of Havoc's production, High Tech's production. I was a huge fan of. Of course, Kanye West had a big influence on me when he first came out. But
Uh-huh.
Common, I listen to a lot of East Coast rap, all of, I'm from the West Coast. But Dr. Dre is a huge influence. I listened to a lot of Mac Mall too, growing up from the Bay Area.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, just I try to absorb everything because I listen to rap, rock, alternative, to emo, to punk, to ska. So my and I listen to a lot of Cambodian music
Yeah.
too, a lot of Sensei Samut, the Rose Rai Satir, all the Cambodian classics. And what I really enjoy doing is taking all those classics and kind of remaking it, remixing it, and modernizing it.
Uh-huh.
And that's what been one of my things that I think me and my boy Cream from Clap Your Hands was one of the first Cambodian producers to mix hip hop and Cambodian music together. So I'm really proud of that.
Yeah, it sounds like you took a lot of outside influences. Um,
Hmm.
but what about in your personal life? Did you have anyone that sort of helped you figure out the music path that you
Yeah,
were on?
yeah. Yeah, it's funny. My older cousin Pratna, you know how I said I didn't have any role models at the beginning? That's a lie.
Mhm.
My dad is a role model. My mom is also my role model. But I think the biggest positive impact in my life is my older cousin Pratna. He's always been like a bigger brother to me. He's always supported me. Anything that I wanted to pursue, had questions for that, that I couldn't get anywhere else, I would always ask him. So when I first started writing rap music and making beats, he would always be the first one I would send it to and share it with. And, he'd give me his honest feedback. And then, there's a certain point where he wanted to write rap music with me too. And I always looked up to him because he always got his shit together. He's
Uh-huh.
always been really super, extremely smart. And he's just been a huge positive impact in my life.
Did he push you to go the music route, or he just kind of opened the door for you?
I think he opened the door. I think he didn't really push me, but he supported me enough to let me know that okay, it's okay for me to pursue this, and my dad too.
Yeah.
And I talked to my
Oh.
pops. I was going to broadcast communications, and I said, Dad, I really want to record music and audio. And he's like, what kind of jobs can you get with that? the the concern is always, what is your next economic sustainability
Yeah.
with what you want to pursue? And I told him, well, I can work at the news station, I can hold a microphone in a movie set. There's a lot of things, everything needs sound, right, Dad? He goes, okay, that makes sense.
Hmm.
So he's I got his blessings and able to transfer. But I lost my train of thought. What are we talking about?
Um, who, if he pushed you in that direction,
Oh,
and then
yes.
your dad accepted
Yeah.
it. Um,
Yeah.
but you're doing a bunch of different things now. Can we get to how you are doing all this advocacy work as well?
Yeah, all my friends will tell you that this advocacy work, community work, was really never part of the plan. I think when you start making things happen, you start pursuing your curiosity, pursuing your dreams. Really, you meet people who are doing great things, and you see that they're doing great things. You see that they're impacting the community in such a positive way, and you want to do that same in your community. Like I have such a good group of friends around me during that time where I was pursuing music, not because they were pursuing music too, but because they were really interested and supportive of what I was trying to do. Because this path that I was trying to take with music, a lot of Cambodian Americans who grew up didn't really have the opportunity to, right? It's either you work in a factory or you go to college, you get a degree, and you do these things that your parents are expecting you to do for, economics, sustainability. But for me, I was just in a position just to kind of pursue things. Lucky enough, I was able to sustain because, I learned that I had to work. I had so many jobs while pursuing this dream. But I got into community advocacy because I got to a point in my life where I felt like I've always been marginalized, always been pushed to the side, and you get to a point to you feel like, man, just being existing in this country is a political statement, especially with the anti-immigrant and the anti-Asian hate rhetoric that you've seen in the past few years. But 20 years ago when I was doing music, I realized that music had such an impact on people that you've never ever met. So I saw that as a vehicle to really spark change, spark dialogue. So I transferred that platform from music. I started a clothing brand too called Red Scarf Revolution, right? That was huge. I ran that for 10 years. And my goal for Red Scarf Revolution was to bring what I grew up with, the street and urban culture, skateboarding, hip hop, but with a Cambodian influence. And then along with music, apparel, my goal was really to tell our story, and telling our story puts you in a category where you're kind of becoming an activist because you're speaking up, you're being loud. Growing up in our family, in our culture, we were taught to always respect authority. Silence is survival, right? But now we're in a different country with different set of rights and privileges,
Mm.
and I am in a position where I can use my privilege to really speak up for those who can't speak up for themselves. And this is one of the reasons why I'm so loud and vocal and advocate for our immigrant and refugee communities, because this community gave my family so much, and I want to extend that to the others, who came after me. I don't want to be a ladder kicker.
Mm. We're going to park that and revisit, because I want to actually go and get a detailed account of your journey on how you got
Yeah.
there. So you started in
Yeah.
music, and then
Mm-hmm.
you developed a clothing brand called Red Scarf
Mm-hmm.
Revolution.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I know the
So
story behind that.
yeah.
But I don't know if listeners know. So Red Scarf
Yeah.
Revolution, you mentioned numerous times, and I thought about it as well. It's like, why would he call it that? Can you just give
Very
us like,
provocative.
yeah?
Yes.
Can you give us like an
Yes.
elevator pitch on why you called it that, and what people thought of it?
Yeah, I think the reception was pretty consistent throughout. Red Scar Revolution, really, I parked that name. I pinned it in my brain because when I was in high school, I was in a punk rock band. I really want to be provocative. I was a huge fan of Rage Against the Machine, so that's where I was going. I want to create a rap rock group called Red Scarf Revolution, and the name itself is just so provocative because if you understand Cambodian history, the red scarf is attributed to the Khmer Rouge, and that's the revolution, right? The Khmer Rouge Revolution. But when I started this clothing brand, I just needed to call it something, and that name kind of stuck, and it makes sense. And once I dropped my first T-shirt, people start hitting me. I was like, man, that name is so disrespectful. Are you trying to promote the Khmer Rouge? Are you a sympathizer? And then we have conversations right online and instant messaging, and I explain it. So that tells me that I need to explain why I'm using this name. So the idea is the Red Scar Revolution is to be provocative. I want to draw people in and question and capture their emotion and anger on what the combination of word means, right? But then once we have a conversation, like for me, my thought of Red Scarf Revolution is to take the red scarves back, because before the Khmer Rouge, Akrama was part of our daily life and culture way before the Khmer Rouge co-opted it, right? So in a sense, I want to kind of take that back and say, this is a new revolution. We're taking our culture back. We're taking our arts back. We're taking our music back. So so if you look at the designs that I put out, I took down my website because I don't run it anymore. But every design is a period piece. It falls into place of the Cambodian timeline. We have Sinsi Samut, we have Angkor Wat. So every piece that I've designed for this clothing brand is part of a story of our Cambodian history. And my goal really was to take all that back, what the Khmer Rouge tried to destroy. So this is a new revolution, and I'm opening it up and connecting and bridging the upcoming generation to this history that I'm a first generation a part of, because a lot of folks, a lot of kids, a lot of youth who are grown up here, their parents don't really talk about it because they're so traumatized and they don't get the history and the living hear the history because the parents are so traumatized they're unable to talk about it. And I don't want them to forget that history. It's a dark history, but that's something that we have to acknowledge, teach, and remember so we can move forward. So
yeah, that right there.
Years, yeah.
That explanation right there shows that you're a true artist. Like, you are using clothing to incite conversation and dialogue and teach history.
Yeah.
That's what art is.
I've been at the grocery store, not even just Cambodians, just Americans and people. It's like, what's that mean? What's that mean? Because first of all, the things I design is very, based off streetwear, logo flips here and there. And I think it was a good run, and Red Scarf Revolution became a life on its own, where it just went beyond clothing. It became a platform where I would throw events, the candlelight vigil that we did in 2017, which I'm extremely proud of, and I hold screenings here with, First They Killed My Father and the animation Funan, which is an excellent, excellent depiction of life during the Khmer Rouge. So I would do, events and community talks and, represent myself as Red Scarf Revolution on panels on genocide around the community
Hmm.
in the United States. So, it just became a platform to discuss and talk and connect.
So why did you stop it?
Capacity. I
Yeah.
just don't have the capacity. Um, I started in 2013, 14. I stopped it, a couple years ago, and COVID, and running a clothing brand, you kind of have to drop new designs
Right.
almost quarterly to kind of keep the sales going.
Hmm.
For a while, it's sustaining itself. I can sell the same design. Encore what doesn't go out of style. It just depends how you place it on and design it. But I just felt like, okay, I did this for a decade. I think it accomplished quite a bit, and it's just ready to move on. Move on to different things. And now my son, who's 18, he's taking Red Scarf Revolution, shortening it to Scarf, and starting his own brand. So we're just kind of passing it down. So he's working on a few things.
Oh, he must be so proud of you.
I'm so proud of him.
Oh, because I know
Yeah.
you did episodes back in like 2019. You were doing this advocacy work way back then as well. Well, no, I
Yeah.
mean way
Yeah.
back then was 6 years ago, but all this is not recent. You've been doing it for a while, and you
Yeah.
were
Yeah.
saying that you don't really talk about. You don't really push them in a certain way. You want them to find themselves, and it's
Yeah.
such a, I don't know. You must be really proud that he's kind of gravitated to what you were doing.
Yeah, I mean, he's just started his first year in college at UW Tacoma, and he's going for communications, and
Hmm.
I'm in communications. So it's just really great to see your kids kind of blossom into their own person. And to me, I see my responsibility as a parent is to raise good people,
Hmm.
respectable people, and people that are helpful and full of compassion and empathy for others. Do you have any kids, Vanny?
I do. I have a 5 and 8-year-old. I'm in the trenches
Ah,
right
you're
now.
busy.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's busy time. But I think for 5 to 10, I think those are my favorite ages because they're still curious.
Uh-huh.
They still kind of like look up to you. But I have two teenagers, 18 and 16, so they're like I'm on autopilot.
Well, every stage has its challenges and
Yeah,
its moments that you don't want to let go of, but it
yeah.
feels
Can I
really
ask you a
hard.
question?
Hmm.
My kids do not speak Khmer at all. I
Hmm.
speak Khmer pretty good. I can
Hmm.
go to Cambodia and get around. I can't read or write,
Hmm.
but my wife, she grew up with a white stepdad, so she can understand, so she can't speak. One
Hmm.
of my biggest regrets is not teaching my kids to speak the language. So
Yeah.
my question to you is, how do you preserve and help, instill culture in your kids who's grown up in a different country, so far removed? Like my kids think Cambodia is just some foreign country over there.
Yeah.
You
Okay.
know?
So my kids are half white, and
Hmm.
I don't speak Khmer very well either. I would say that my Khmer level is probably like at a grade 1 level, where
Sure.
it's stalled
Which is
then.
great. It's a great start.
I mean, I can understand it, but I can't have like
Yeah.
a complex conversation. I can get by with like
Hmm.
everyday stuff, right? Like how much is
Yeah.
that? How are you? That sort
Yeah.
of stuff. But um,
Have you
I'm
been? Have you been back?
yeah,
Have you
once in
visited?
2009, but we're actually headed there in December.
Awesome.
Yeah, all
I
the
find
my kids and my husband, we're all going as a family for about 3 weeks. But
that's
I'm
fun.
discovering myself as well. I'm rediscovering my heritage. Like I
Hmm.
sort of
Yes.
put it on the back burner. Well, I wouldn't even say put it on the back burner. I sort of dismissed it because I just was trying to figure out who I am too. And it wasn't
Yeah.
until during
Yeah.
COVID, when all this like questioning of this existential questions popped up, you're like, what the hell am I doing? And I just started looking at what I was doing and how, like, is that what I want to do with my life? And who am I? That sort of stuff, right?
Hmm.
So that's what eventually evolved into the podcast. And I'm on this journey of rediscovery now, and I read a bunch of books. I'm still, looking for books to read. I purchased a bunch of books that I haven't read yet either.
Same. I'm guilty of
Yeah.
that as well.
And then, this nonprofit that we started in May 2025, we've done so much with it so far, and we've introduced language classes. So I'm going to enroll my daughter in the language class, and I'm going to enroll myself as well, so that I
Awesome.
can, yeah,
Yeah, that's cool.
communicate better. But those are the small steps that I'm taking right now, because yes, she's 8 and my son is 5, but it's better now than never, right?
Yeah, especially language. Language, the earlier you learn it, the better.
The easier it is.
What
Yeah.
I've Yeah, that's cool. I should take classes too, but when I get to Cambodia, like I just feel like so at home. Like,
Right?
but the locals don't think I'm Cambodian. They think I'm Japanese everywhere I
Maybe
go
it's the way you
because I think it's my
dress.
beard.
And the way you dress
Yeah, it's
too.
definitely the way I dress too. Yeah, they know immediately that you're not from there. But I
Uh-huh.
tell them I was born here, bro.
Oh, I was told that so Jetait, he lives in Phnom Penh, um, and he's Khmer too, and he speaks Khmer, but he says that even though he speaks to them in Khmer, they'll respond back in English. And
Really?
yeah,
Huh.
and I'm like, wow, that just shows that, they can tell that you're not born and
Mm-hmm.
raised there. So
Yeah.
for me, my perspective was that they were just trying to be accommodating, like, oh, don't
Yeah.
try too hard. I'll
Yeah.
speak English to you. Don't worry.
Mm-hmm.
But I was speaking with another one of my guests. He was saying that it's not. He doesn't think it's that. He doesn't think it's like a accommodation thing. He thinks it's more like they're not proud of being Khmer thing, or like they don't want to use,
Really?
yeah, or they don't want to use their
Yeah.
language. Like they want to
Yeah.
learn how to speak English better. So I don't know
Yeah. Yeah.
what it is.
Well, that's funny. That's funny because for me, I think it's cool to be Khmer,
Mm.
but growing up, it wasn't always that way, right? I don't know. Let me know if you experienced this.
Yep.
You grew up in Ontario. Was there a huge Cambodian population in Ontario?
There was a sizable one in Hamilton
Hmm.
and Toronto. And Toronto's only about an
Yeah.
hour away. We had,
Yeah.
gatherings, and they'd always be like, I don't even know, but we'd have a hall and it would be packed of Cambodians
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
our allies, but
Yeah.
mostly Cambodians.
Yeah.
So
So.
I grew up in that environment, but I never really immersed myself in it, if that makes sense. Like I attended,
Mhm.
but I never really questioned, like, okay, well, why do you do it this way? Why do you do? I never was inquisitive enough, and that, like, my
Yeah.
curiosity was not piqued because I think I had this struggle trying to figure out who I was too, and I really wanted to be Canadian. I really wanted to fit in
Mhm.
because
Mhm.
when I was in middle school, we moved to an area of the city where it was mostly white people, and obviously,
Yeah.
those are
Yeah.
the formative years, right? And that's when I really rejected it, and I
Mhm.
sort of regret that now. But there's a lot of factors
Yeah.
into why I rejected it.
Yeah. And that's pretty a common story that I've run into, not just Cambodian Americans, but Cambodians all over the world, even from
Hmm.
France, because assimilation is survival, and the closer you are and the better you assimilate, you think you're accepted, right? So you kind of shed the skin of where you came from. So, okay, this is my new country.
Hmm.
I asked that question because there was a epidemic. I would say it's an epidemic. It's pretty comedic now, pretty funny, but back in the day, being Cambodian wasn't cool, right? So a lot of people in the Cambodian community, when they got their citizenship, they would change their name, which is fine.
Hmm.
It's everybody has their prerogative and how they navigate and how they feel valued and accepted. But what I found funny was a lot of Cambodians here just erased their Cambodian heritage and just claimed they were Thai. There are a lot of
No.
Thai people that weren't really Thai. There's, because we're all mutts, right? We're all mixed here.
Yeah, yeah.
Even my wife got like a quarter Thai in her, but they would accentuate and, you know, the anything that's not Cambodia. Because being Cambodia back here in this environment, we were seen as thugs and gang members. We were seen as a problem, not part of the solution.
Oh.
Just the way, just because of the gangs and how we were raised and all of this, and a lot of racism too, right? People don't want to be targeted because you're
Yeah.
Cambodian,
Well,
right?
that's
So it
interesting.
was it was huge. It's funny now, but it's huge. But what you said about just trying to find your identity and not engage in the Cambodian side of things because you were Canadian, and I felt I was at a period in my life when I was a teenager, like I wanted to be 100,000% American and not Cambodian at all. I think
Hmm.
that's just a normal experience for a lot of immigrants and refugees who are trying to assimilate. So,
Hmm.
don't beat yourself up for it.
Yeah, and it is also the environment. Like assimilation was the thing, whereas I think now our heritage and uniqueness are
Hmm.
more celebrated.
Yeah, because it's more celebrated, it's more accepted, and
Hmm.
it's more seen, right? We didn't
Hmm.
being first generation, like. and to nobody's fault, right? Even the United States had, one of the biggest challenges. Even today, a lot of folks don't know what
Yep.
Cambodians are, despite having documentaries out and
Yeah.
being in the news for a war. There's a
Yeah.
lot of people that don't know, and it's not necessarily their fault that they don't know. Like, there's a
Yeah.
lot of shit I don't know.
Yeah. Well, and when we aren't in the news as well, it's not really centered around us. It's more centered around like
Hmm.
their lens. So, for example,
Hmm.
I remember seeing I've requested this book on my Christmas wish list, but she's passed away now. She's not with us anymore, but she was a professor at one of the Canadian universities, and she had submitted something for publication, but they said that it's not important enough. Basically, I'm paraphrasing. They said it's not important enough because it doesn't apply
Wow.
to like the Western society.
Right. Right.
Yeah, but I lost my train of thought. Oh yes, Western lens. So she provided an example of how like it's important for us to share our stories as much as we can, because
Yeah.
if we're waiting for other people to share our stories, they're going to be sanitizing it in a way, or like
Hmm.
offering it in a way that doesn't center our experiences. So for example, she said that she came across an article in the Montreal Gazette, a newspaper, and it was a picture of her and her mom in the snow, and the caption was like, Asians love the sight of snow, something like that. Yeah, and it didn't like, it's like, okay, well, okay, it sort of like made it
Everybody likes snow.
it sort of made it look like they were like, they should be grateful, and that
Yeah.
the this country is providing them with opportunities, and here's their first time with snow. Like, it didn't really
Right.
talk about their own experience, right? It was
Yeah.
from the lens
Yeah.
of someone who isn't Cambodian.
Yeah, the lens of a savior. Look at us. They come into our country. We're saving them, providing them with all this stuff. And I agree. That's why I'm so adamant in advocacy and just telling our story and be loud
Mm-hmm.
about our experience.
Yeah.
Um, I, you know, the, I think early 2000 music. Since the crime bill in the United States, a lot of Cambodians. We have this thing we call the school to prison pipeline within our urban communities, but with our Southeast Asian refugee and immigrant communities, we have school to prison to deportation pipeline. So I've always been in community because all my communities been affected by this law that's been passed. I think that's really, really started interesting me in a little bit of politics. I'm not really into the political side of politics. I'm more into the governing side. I want to shape policies, because where the world's always going to have immigrants and refugees because of turmoil and conflict and economic insustainability. And I really want to create a place, especially in the place where I live, where everyone feels welcome.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just one of my biggest things. And how do you create shape policies? You reach people through arts, right? Video, clothing, whatever. So it's everything's, to me, is interconnected, is intersectional. Nothing works in a silo. Every decision made, every policy passed, it's it affects everyone.
Mm-hmm.
And it's hard for a lot of my peers and community members who are working hard jobs, 10, 12 hours a day, to get involved and engaged. And I feel like I always say this, but I'm so privileged. I can't not be, vocal and loud about it, because if I get to a good place where so many opportunities are afforded to me and I just take that and run and I keep the door open for anybody else coming behind me, I think I do my parents a disservice because they did it for me.
Mm-hmm. Is that working in government now? Is that why you decided to
Hmm.
um, take on the role as digital media manager at the Attorney General's office?
Yeah, yeah. I worked for our governor, Governor Inslee, before that. So this is my first stint in government. I had quite the journey. I mean, I had worked a whole bunch of different jobs. I worked at Intel for a long time. So I was in the semiconductor industry. I quit that industry because job was great, money was good, but there was no fulfillment. I was just
Mm.
going to work, clocking in, clocking out, and then just do my advocacy work, pursue music afterwards. But I felt like I had to do something else, so I quit that industry, got into marketing, did a little bit of marketing, wasn't too interested in marketing, but I found during my marketing journey, communications, I was just really good at it because I knew how to edit video. I taught myself graphic design because I read Scar Revolution, and when you do film and video, audio is probably one of the most important things, and that's my base. So I learned how to film, do photography, all in one swoop, and then I just found that communications I was really good at. So I started in a private sector, worked for a safety company, fall protection safety company. Went to a nonprofit, Tacoma Community House. I worked at Tacoma Community House, which served my parents. They helped my parents learn English and helped my parents get their citizenship. So it was great to be back there. I worked there for 2 years, and then that's when my journey started. I worked at the nonprofit doing their social media, external, internal communications. And then I went to PLU, Pacific Lutheran University, which is a liberal college here in Tacoma, private school. Did that for a couple of years. And then just coincidentally, I was on campus and the governor was riding his bike around campus and I saw him. And that time I was pursuing an open seat too, an open city council seat. I was trying to get appointed to an at-large position, and one of his staff members recognized me from going through the interview process, and he told Governor Inslee, like, "Hey, Governor Inslee, this is Silong. He's running for city council." And Governor Inslee's like, didn't know who I was, right? He's like, "Hey, man, run! I hope you win." And then I took a selfie with him, and then I got hit up on LinkedIn by my colleague Jim Kay. He told me that they have a position in the office, and he wanted me to apply because they needed somebody with strong, multimedia skills. And to me, I don't have a college degree myself, but I was working at a university at the time, and I felt like I was not going to get this job at this level without a college degree. But I have a really strong portfolio. My videos are on point, graphic design's on point. So since they reached out to me, at first I was like, okay. I kind of dragged my feet on it because I've applied for many jobs at the state level, even at the city level, at the county level, that I would never ever think of even getting an interview. And a lot of the times I felt people reached out to me because I have a pretty strong social media presence, and I was going through the appointment process for city council, which I didn't get appointed to, which is okay. But I think from my experiences applying for jobs like that at the city, state, or county level, I felt like they reached out to me just to hit a quota, so they can say, "Oh, we have a diverse pool of applicants," but would never ever consider me anyway, right? But I applied. Several months later, it was a long process. Several months later, I got a call for an interview. I'm like, holy shit, I got a call for an interview, and it was a online interview first. I didn't think nothing of it, so I didn't take it seriously. I didn't dress up. I just talked to the team. Then a couple of weeks later, holy shit, in-person interview. All right, I'm on round 2, and I talked to my wife, and we're like, holy shit, I got round 2 in-person interview. So I went to the interview, and I didn't, even at that time, I didn't take it seriously. I didn't dress up. I just got off my job and went to the Capitol.
What were you doing then?
So
you got off your job?
I was at Pacific Lutheran. Yeah,
Okay.
I was at Pacific Lutheran University, doing the same role, digital media manager, managing social media, just creating content, telling the stories of our students.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, several months later, they called me back and said, "Hey, I got the job." I'm like, holy shit. Because I didn't want to leave PLU. Yeah, I didn't want to leave PLU for one. It was an awesome job. I love what I did. And then, since I worked there, my kids would have got 90% off of tuition in college.
Is there any advantage to
Granted, if they wanted to go to PLU, right?
Uh-huh.
So that was the plan. But man, it was an opportunity that I could not let go. So I ended up, being the digital communications manager for our three-term Governor Inslee, in his last couple of years. And it's just one of the best jobs and experiences I've ever had. I've had access to a level of access that I've never ever seen. We fly in a jet just to go to Seattle if we wanted to, a lot of perks, a lot of access. I was able to meet Biden. I met Kamala through it, just if you're in the political world. So being in that job, following Inslee around, taking photos and just managing and basically being his social media voice, right? Twitter, anything that tweeted was me and the team. But being at that level of service, seeing how he navigates, seeing how he talks to state legislatures, I've seen how he talked to federal legislatures. Now, I was sitting in calls where he's talking to our president of the United States, and here I'm a refugee in Cambodia, just in awe. Just wow, I'm in this room with some of the smartest people in our state, and some of the not so smartest people in our state, and that really,
That opened your
when
eyes.
Michelle, yeah, when Michelle Obama said these people aren't really smart, there's a lot of people that are smart that are in leadership roles
I
that
think you can
you
say
don't
that
know
in
how they got there.
every industry, not just
That's
government.
true.
Yeah.
That's true. But being in this role at the state level really inspired me to pursue politics more intentionally. I was always in that space, but I've seen in rooms where policies being shaped that will affect demographics of people that aren't even able to voice their opinion. And that's why it's so important for folks like us and you to get involved in our local politics and our local civics, because that's where the change really happens. That's where the chokehold really happens, and that's where the biggest impacts happen is at your local level. Your school boards, your park commissions, your city councils, your mayor. And Tacoma is not a big city, but it's not a small city. We're the third largest in the state of Washington, and our economic activity and drivers is important to the whole state. And I really wanted to get involved to for one, show that representation matters.
Mm-hmm.
There's a generation of Cambodians that don't see themselves in the political sphere at all. There's a few. I've ran into a few with the job who's just doing such good work, right? And it just inspires me to say, okay, I'm pretty visible as it is. If I run, maybe I would, spark a inspiration for some young political, kids who are currently in college for political science now to really pursue it. And not just that, but access as well. Being able to have access and resources to, say, a young kid, Cambodian American who wants to run for office, wanted to, pursue it. And now we have somebody who's been through it and
Yeah. Reach
experienced it
out
and
to
can
you
really
for some
guide him.
advice. Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah, and I'm not the first one in the United States, right? We have a rep, Vanna Howard in Boston,
Mm-hmm.
Massachusetts, is repping the state legislature. Lowell's former mayor was the first Cambodian mayor elected, and then we have Long Beach councilwoman. So Cambodians nationwide is we're getting more civically engaged. I would like to see more though, because the Hmong community in Minnesota and the Vietnamese community in Orange County super involved. Got a lot of elected officials that help shape these policies that really affect people's lives.
Mm-hmm. So how long were you in that? You're still doing it, the digital
Yeah.
media role. How long have you been doing it now?
Yeah, I've been doing the digital media role, in the private sector, academic sector, and public sector for about a whole decade now. But
Oh.
at the state level, I started with Governor Inslee in 2022, I believe. So 3 years. Term is 4 years. He termed out, and then afterwards, I went. Now I'm doing a really similar job with our Attorney General of the state of Washington,
Mm-hmm.
which I'm really proud of. He's the first Black Attorney General of the state of Washington to ever get elected. And we're on his first year, so I'm looking forward to the next 3 years, that he's serving. So,
But you're also doing the so you ran for city council.
hmm
And sorry,
hmm
can you tell me what
yeah,
takeaways did you get from that experience?
yeah. The election was November 4th. We didn't win. We lost by about 250 votes, about the marginal 3.5%. But my biggest takeaway is how supportive community members are when they hear that you're running. The amount of support I got, the votes and donations I got. I ran my campaign a little different, but my biggest takeaway is that if you step up to do things if you feel like it's the right thing to do, you should just do it, because we ran this campaign. You don't run a race thinking that you're going to lose. We thought we were going to win, of course,
Mm-hmm.
but we were running against an incumbent. It's hard to unseat an incumbent, but we ran this campaign to really raise a platform and the policies that I wanted to see our city take shape, right? I want to extend our renters protections in Tacoma. We have the strongest rental protections in the state of Washington, passed in 2023. I want to see that extended. We have many folks on the city council who are landlords who are working to repeal it as we speak, right? And our current minimum wage is $16.72 or something like that in Tacoma. I like to see it raised to $20 an hour, and that's a minimum wage. It's not a livable wage. The
Mm,
data shows that the livable wage in Tacoma, you need at least $29 an hour to be a single person.
wow.
So we're not even asking for a livable wage. We just want to raise it so families and working families can have a little bit extra, so they can pay their bills, so they can have a more secure, sustainable work and life balance. I'm a huge supporter of unions. During the campaign, I was, endorsed by over 15 unions and organizations that got my back. But it when the election results dropped, we knew that we weren't going to catch up. We were 10% margin, but we closed it to 3.5% margin. But what I learned was, doing a local race, a regional race to represent a community, that you really have to get down and talk to the community members. Knocking on doors really helps a lot. Um, and just talking to so many residents that I wouldn't have talked to, or
Hmm.
meeting folks that I wouldn't have met if I didn't campaign. My biggest takeaway is that everybody wants the same thing. Everybody wants to be able to take care of their kids. They want to go to work and come home and have dinner with their families. They want to be able to celebrate the holidays without struggling, feeling the pinch. And public safety is always an issue. Our homelessness crisis in the state of Washington is, on high red alert. People would like to see that, being improved in one way or another. Those are really big issues to tackle. And just the housing crisis. We don't have enough homes, and Washington State is a growing city. And I just want to see our city be more friendlier and rezoning so people can build faster. So just things like that. A lot of, like, we don't think about as normal citizens,
Mm.
right?
Well, you sound very passionate about it. Is this something that you would try for again?
No, I don't know. I wouldn't. I don't want to, say no, but I don't think I see another campaign in the near future because, win or lose, being on the council or not would actually, amplify the voice and the work a little bit more. But you have to understand, when you're elected to serve in a public office, you work for the people. So the
Hmm.
work continues. The work is not done. We're going to still hold our city council members accountable. We're going to still, gather signatures, and petition to what we think our community needs. And I'm still going to fight for, the district 4 and the residents here and my
Hmm.
neighbors. The work don't stop.
Mm. I want to touch on Panabou. Is that how you pronounce it?
Hmm.
Panabou
Yeah,
Digital.
Panaboo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you tell me
Well,
about that? Is that your own agency?
yeah, it's my own agency. It's just me, really, because
Okay.
when I do a lot of throughout these years, I do a lot of freelancing too. So I freelance with nonprofits, ranging from graphic designs, designing annual reports, to doing fundraising videos. So Panaboo is just a company that I have that I funnel money to and pay taxes to. That's not part of my personal thing. So it's just an LLC that I do freelance work with. So I got the name from Don't Think I've Forgotten. Have you seen the documentary on
No.
Cambodian music? Don't think I've. Oh, Vanny, you got to see
Okay.
that. It's the
Is it on YouTube?
best. It's on YouTube. You got to
Okay.
pay for it though. Don't think
Oh.
I've forgotten. It's the best documentary on Cambodian music and how the Vietnam War brought Western style music and calypso and all that, and really reshaped Cambodian popular culture. Because since Smoot discovered it, you have to watch it. But anyways, I took Panaboo from the name Panaboo from that documentary. Panaboo was the first record store in Phnom Penh during the
Hmm.
Vietnam War that had vinyls, and with the vinyls they had music like Santana, The Doors, so all this rock and roll, Latin music, all that stuff came during the Vietnam War, and then the Cambodian artists, musicians discovered it, and that's where you get these Cambodian oldies that we listen to this day.
Yeah.
So Panaboo was really a hub of culture, a hub of connecting folks, when the war was spilling over.
And
So it was the first cultural hub of the Cambodian music scene. So I extracted that name from the documentary, and now I'm taking that same energy and essence and telling our stories. Like you said earlier about the professor, that nobody can tell our stories like we can. So Panaboo is like the opportunity for me to work with the community too. But I like to do a lot of projects outside of my work to tell the stories of our community members here.
hmm.
Southeast Asia, Cambodians, Lao, Hmong, and I. So it's just, yeah, that's what Panaboo is. It's just a
When did you
agency that I
establish that?
have that my it. I established like about like 6 years ago, and the dream is to have it to be a full-fledged agency where I can hire young kids in this community to do videography, to do graphic design, to do audio, and just get into the multimedia communications industry. And I've been mentoring my friends, for photography and stuff, and any projects that come across my desk that I don't have capacity for, I always delegate it to, my Cambodian friends who are photographers
Uh-huh.
but can't get work or don't know how to get work. So I'm introducing them to, grants. You get just grants for everything, like C Comedy. I introduced them to, a couple of grants over the past few years, and we've been running for 5 years straight. And with KH2, the Khmer Anti-Deportation Advocacy Group, man, that's been around for about a decade now, since the first Trump administration. But just being able to open doors is really my biggest thing that I'm proud of. Opening doors for others to get into industries that they want to pursue or curious about.
Yeah, so it sounds like 6 years ago, just before COVID, you had so much. You just started so much. The
Yeah,
advocacy group, you said that it's about a decade old. Did you start from you? Aren't you
yeah,
the co-founder? So
yeah. I'm the co-founder.
okay,
The anti-deportation group was born out of an emergency. Cambodians were getting deported since the early 2000s here in the United States,
I
but
didn't know that.
quietly,
I didn't know that until
yeah.
I listened to your podcast. Like that's
Hmm.
how removed I am, and that's how little coverage our community
Hmm.
gets in
Yeah,
that aspect.
yeah. Yeah, it's a testament to that. We're not loud about it. It doesn't get heard.
Hmm.
But yeah, Cambodian deportations was happening since the early 2000s, but it wasn't done in a manner which this current administration is doing it. Under Obama, Obama, we call him the deporter in chief, right? He deported a record amount of just not just Cambodia, but everybody who was criminals. But the thing about the Obama administration, where I think I'm against deportation in general, but with the Obama and Biden administration, at least they did it humanely. They went after the real criminals, and everybody was treated humanely and went through the due process that they're entitled to. Whereas this administration in 2016, the Trump administration during the first one, you see if you pay attention to USA News, American news here in the United States, you often see ICE raids happening at schools, ICE raids happening at immigration courts, ICE raids happening at people at a place where they work. So during the first Trump administration, they were doing that to the Cambodian community, because Cambodia was the only country that's was affected by the Vietnam War that were taking back deportees, and they still are. So Vietnam, Laos, they weren't taking any deportees. So folks who committed crime and refugees with Vietnamese or Lao status was largely safe. But if you were Cambodians, they would snatch you up at work, even if you committed a crime where you say public intoxication. No matter how minor the crime is, if it's a deportable offense, the United States will deport you. But we felt like it was unjust because a lot of these community members, Cambodians, committed a crime when they were young, 16, 17, 18, 19, because of the environment that they grew up in, right? There was petty theft, some even murder, right? So really heinous crimes to minor crimes. But regardless, in the United States, everybody's entitled to due process, and even if you're not an American citizen, you are entitled to rights under our Constitution. So we felt like this is double jeopardy, which is against the Constitution, but they're not citizens, so they're not, they don't fall under the constitutional law where they can't get deported. They can, but as laws changes, some crimes that you're convicted for aren't deportable anymore as laws changes. So what we do with the Khmer Anti-Deportation Group is work with families who's had past convictions, and we connect them with lawyers and resources to see how severe the conviction is. If we can get the conviction overturned, expunged, or pardoned by a governor, then we can remove that order of removal so they're able to stay with their family. So since 2014, the first Trump administration, I'd say our group, the Cambodian Anti-Deportation Advocacy Group, we've helped at least 15 or 16 families stay together. I mean, this is out of hundreds, right? 15, 16 out of 100 is not a huge like percentage wise, but that's 16 family members who have a brother, has an uncle, has a father who largely was, the only breadwinner of the house. So you're uprooting and separating families. What do you expect the family members who are deported to do? So, the ripple effect of deportation runs really deep. It's
I,
not just one person getting deported; it's a whole community
yeah.
getting affected.
I know your heart is in it, and that's why you're doing it. How did you exactly get involved? Like, how did
I
you
got involved because,
start it?
yeah, my friend Cena, which I've been friends with for over 20 years now, since we were young, and my boy Mani, Bang Mani, he was one of the first ones to ever get a deportation order removal in Cambodia. So, when we say we have over 2 decades of experience, he was the first one who went through the criminal justice system, served his time, came out, got on the deportation list, and then was able to get off the deportation list because he got his conviction pardoned by our Governor Inslee. So, with him as our mentor going through the process, we felt like it was we formed out of an emergency when Trump, took office in 2016. We kept hearing of community members and even our friends saying, "Hey, man, so and so just got snatched up by ICE." They would go check in. Like I had a friend who just checked in this past Tuesday, Laos Cat, but they didn't detain him, which was a surprise to all of us. I'm glad he didn't get detained, but he has to check back in 25 days. Anyways, so it was happening so frequently, every week, every couple of days. I'll get a text message, "Hey, my cousin's friend or my brother's blah blah blah, they just got connected by ICE." So I got together with the people who I knew, who were the smartest people that I knew, to say, "Hey, man, what can we do?" And I connected with Bamani, and we connected with the Seattle Clemency Project, and then that's a nonprofit to help people get their criminal convictions expunged and removed. And then we also have the Northwest Immigrants' Rights Project, who does, sometimes pro bono immigrants' rights and advocacy for folks who are going through the process. So we connected with them, formed a partnership, and we do a lot of the intake for both organizations. And just being in community, being a we didn't seek out today to say, "Oh, this is what we're going to do." People came to us
Mm.
because we were the trusted voice in the community. Me, Bang Mani, Sina, and now my friend Savong. And then that's the core, my boy Buntai. So that was the core. So, you know, every single one of them, they would have their network of friends hit them up and say, "What can we do? What can we do?" So, "Oh, okay, there's a common theme that's happening here. Our community is being attacked." So we kind of formed it out of that emergency. And since then, we've been doing this work. We formed it as a legit nonprofit. We get grants and funding, and we have a really, really healthy operating budget now. And now, we it came to a point where Trump was out of office. We were going to change our name because we weren't fighting deportation anymore. They weren't ripping our communities apart anymore. We were going to change our name from the Khmer Anti-Deportation Group to Khmer Advancement and Advocacy Group, because now we're done with deportation. We got to advance our community, so we kind of help them up with resources, things
Hmm.
like that. But now, since
You're
this
back
last
at it.
election, we had to change our name. Yeah, we changed our name back because now every day we get we have email. I don't want to talk about our process, but we have a lot of things going on in the background because these things are happening in the background. We don't want to publicize. A lot of families are really ashamed, right? Because you serve your time, you don't want to get it out there that your brother's being deported, because
Hmm.
believe it or not, even in the early 2000s, the first deportees went to Cambodia. There was no infrastructure at the Cambodian side to receive deportees. So a lot of these cats, a lot of these young women, young men who were deported from the United States in the early 2000s didn't have any family there. They would go there and rot to death. Get into drugs. I have thankfully I have friends who are thriving that's been deported there. They're doing so good. But the first wave of Cambodian Americans who got deported didn't do so well because there's no infrastructure. We see them. They didn't speak the language. They didn't speak Khmer, right? They're
Yeah, they
born,
grew up here.
raised here.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
Do you
now
know
there's
what
a
how?
whole
Do you know what the amount of people were during the first wave?
no, but it was in thousands. It's quietly and slowly, but they went through the process. You know, it's just that it's like you get uprooted from your home in Cambodia because of the war. You come here, you kind of get into another war. You get into this gang life. Now you get me uprooted again. So it's just a vicious cycle of American imperialism that failed our communities.
Oh man, I wish we knew more about this. And thank you for doing the work that you
Yeah.
do. And I'm glad that you're coming on the podcast to share what you're doing and the experiences of our Cambodian community in Washington.
Yeah, not just Washington, all over the
All
United
over,
States.
yeah, but
I
specifically
don't
it's
think
your
this is
work that we're
happening
talking
anywhere
about.
else.
No, I mean it's
Sure.
happening all over the United States. I don't hear of it
Yeah.
happening in Canada. We have, you mentioned that Canada and the US were very similar in culture and such, but our politics is leans more on the liberal side these days.
Hmm.
And we
Hmm.
recently had a federal election where I was like, oh my goodness, I do not want a second Trump here. And
Yeah.
there was a good
Yeah.
chance, but fortunately, we are still a
Hmm.
liberal government. So now everyone knows my political leanings. But that's, I'm sure if you're listening to this podcast, you know where I lean anyways. Can you
Yeah,
tell me?
I think, yeah, just leaning progressive and liberal is not a bad thing. And,
Yeah,
I
not
think
at
it's, you
all.
got to strike the
I'm proud of
balance,
it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, can you tell me about the C Comedy Collective? I didn't get a
Yeah,
chance to
that's
look that up.
oh, it's all good. The Southeast Asia Comedy Collective is just a group of Cambodian, Lao, Vietnamese comedians. Basically, my boy Min Roth. We started this 5 years ago. 5 years ago, Min Roth, he's from Tacoma, comedian, been doing it for a few years. He wanted to do a huge like New Year party, but do it a little different because I don't know how New Year parties, Cambodian parties, or weddings in Ontario or in BC is, but here it's usually the same. It's just music, a band, and then a lot of Hennessy, and it's just you celebrate that way. But the goal for Southeast Asian Comedy Collective is really to use a platform of stand-up comedy to tell our stories of our experiences. So what we're doing, these are the millennials and the Gen Z comedians who are in between, right? They're Cambodian and American, the Cambodian American, where they grew up in a typical traditional household, but also have inherited and adopted, urban life to hood life. So R&B, hip hop, 90s, 2000s. So the Southeast Asian Comedy Collective is really just to highlight and promote Southeast Asian comedies and let folks know that we're not a monolith. We're not all Asians that are doctors and nurses and accountants and whatever those professions that are, typical, stereotypical Asians are, but just to let our community know that we're here and we're telling our stories in a way that hasn't really been told before through stand-up comedy. And ever since we started, we do a flagship show every Cambodian, Thai, Lao, Myanmar New Year in April, and we sold out every year. And I'm really proud of it because we're able to sell out. And a lot of these comics that come on our show and that we feature and we highlight and we give time to are really fairly unknown. Cambodian comics, Vietnamese comics that are just kind of on the up and up in their career, and they're really not known. So we're given an opportunity to come perform in a sold out crowd. That's what I'm really proud of because our messaging is so strong. It's like we're trying to uplift our culture, connect our traditional to who we are today. And we always start our flagship shows with a traditional dance with Klaka, the fundraising, that's coming up here on December 13th. We always open up with a traditional blessing dance. And then after the dance, the host comes on, and then we play R&B music just to get the crowd ramp up. And then we bring our comedians on after the comedian comedy set, which is typically about an hour 15 minutes. Then we have a dance party where we play Cambodian music, rumwong, and then we'll jump into R&B. So it's just a huge celebration. And what I'm proud of most is not just selling out, but the diversity of the crowd that we bring into our world. And a lot of community members are married to Southeast Asians who are white or black, and then they
Mm-hmm.
come and they experience like, oh man, this is just like what we do, at our backyard barbecues, like trying to find common ground and let people know that we are more alike than we are different. But
Different.
this
Mm-hmm.
is who we are. This is our Southeast Asian culture. And every year we try to include, open up the we open up the event with different dance group. Like last year we had a Lao dance group to open it up. But yeah, it's just really to celebrate our culture through comedy and not and try to uplift Southeast Asian comedians into the stand-up comedy space.
How many of these shows do you do a year?
We do one a quarter, so we do four a year.
Are you booked up
We
for
have one.
2026?
2026, our next show is going to be in April. I'll let you know about it. It usually takes place in Tacoma.
Okay.
We did a few in Seattle, the Seattle Asian Art Museum. Um, so we have one a quarter, and then we have our flagship one in April, and this one happening tonight actually is our winter one.
Oh, nice. I'm just curious if you would ever come to Vancouver and do a tour.
Hell yeah, we're trying to expand it. What we're trying to do is we're trying to take it nationally. We wanted to
Yeah.
take it to Long Beach because Long Beach has the highest population of Cambodians, and
Yeah.
they have like 4 or 5 Cambodian stand-up comedians who are actively in the scene doing really great work. And yeah, and the thing is, like we pay everybody. We pay everybody that's part of production. We pay our comedians. We pay our crew. I'm a volunteer, of course, because I'm the co-founder. And you know, our last year, 2 years ago, we had it at a car museum, and the car museum had the Japanese imports as a thing. And if you don't know, the United States in the early 2000s, racing was a huge thing in the Asian community. You know, Fast and Furious,
Hmm. Hmm.
and all that. So it's such a nostalgic setting for our comedy show. It's really cool.
I want to talk about your advice to your younger self. So this is what you said, quote, show up, put in the work, listen more, and give yourself the grace you offer others. Own the space you want to occupy. That feeling of being an imposter is a lie your brain tells you. Your preparation and presence are your proof. Keep focusing on consistent effort and recognizing that competence is built over time, which will silence the self-doubt far more effectively than waiting for perfection. Now, when did you realize this advice?
Recently, yeah,
Just
within the
recently.
past decade. Well, within the past decade,
Okay.
right? Um, Imposter syndrome was always huge with me growing up, and it's still till this day in some rooms. I feel like, man, it's really out of my league, but it's not. You just have to be authentic and comfortable with yourself. Yeah, that younger message was valid, is a lot, but as I think about it more, I want to include that what I would say to my younger self, which really changed my perspective and outlook, really changed the direction of my life, is really to take responsibility and accountability for your own actions. There's a period in my life growing up where I felt like nothing that happened to me was my fault, right? Are you always trying to pin something externally to something else? And then when I don't attach the consequences of my own actions, it's never my fault. So
Mm.
there's always going to be a problem. So I think um, I was about 24, 25 when I came to a realization that I'm getting in my own way, right? I am the barrier to my own success because I would make excuses when I had opportunities. Like I always wanted to pursue music. I went to school for it, but when there was opportunities that was in front of my face, I wouldn't commit to it. That's why when I say always show up, to always show up, like I would cancel meetings that I had opportunities because I felt like I wasn't good enough. It was an anxiety thing. I didn't know how I could show up and why are they offering this to me anyway? I didn't think I was good enough, you know?
Wow.
So,
Your talents
yes,
screamed at everyone else, but your skills and
yeah, it was
talents.
hard. It's hard to realize, and I think the obstacle that had to get over was to realize that every action that I took, I was responsible for. I had to hold myself accountable to myself. You know,
Hmm.
I can blame others for anything, for all my failures, but that's not gonna, until I own up to it, I'm never gonna get over it. I'm just gonna be sitting on it.
Before
So,
I hit record here, you mentioned you agreed with me that we have good a good sample of Cambodians to highlight, and I find you very inspiring. Uh, is there
thank you.
anyone that you look up to right now
Yeah,
in the community?
in the community, oh man, there's so many. I look up to folks like Anchan Parn, the flute player. He's been telling our stories, telling his story. He survived the Khmer Rouge. He had a documentary on PBS like over a decade ago. He's one I usually look up to. I follow Elizabeth Becker. Elizabeth Becker was one of the only few journalists, the only woman journalist to ever interview Pol Pot, and I've
Hmm.
connected her with her online. And I'm currently reading her book and just looking at her archives that from that period of time. She's someone I really look up to. I've been following Roland Nouveau online and engaged in social media, which is really cool. He was the one of the photographers who took the famous photos of the Khmer Rouge coming down in the tank. And just to see his journey from taking that photo to being back in Cambodia and just, being a regular person is such a huge dynamic, just to let us know that our history is not that far away. It didn't happen too long ago. And of course, my parents, man, the strength of my mom and my dad, who was able to come here with nothing and just, you know, it wasn't perfect, but they gave us an opportunity to get on a path to where I am today, where I'm able to take care of my family and my children without, too many complaints. Of course, my boy Pratch and Kaylee down in Long Beach, who are, the stewards of the Cambodian Town Film Festival. Pratch and I worked a lot on music early in the day, so he's my brother. Um, I look up to Baramay, Laura Mam, and
Mm-hmm.
her brother Andrew
Oh,
with
they're amazing. Yeah.
Manda. Oh my goodness, man, they're living my dream. That's my ultimate goal ever, was to go and because I will claim that Pratch and I, along with Cream, in 97, 98, 2000, we were the ones that brought hip hop and rap to Cambodia. If you look at Pratch Lee, he's the first rapper to ever penetrate Cambodian airwaves on the radio. His album actually got played and banned because he's talking about the Khmer Rouge in his
Yeah.
raps. But yeah, I went to Cambodia in early 2004 with him, and we did like a little tour where he'd perform his rap songs, and I produced for him. And just to see the growth of the hip hop community. Shout out to KK and Tiny Toons, who he started a school out there that teaches hip hop, breakdancing, DJing, and all that. But just to see hip hop evolve in Cambodia the way it did, because hip hop played such a huge role in my life growing up in America, discovering who I am as a person, just knowledge itself, and just to see it hip hop translate and flourish in Cambodia just tells me that hip hop is just the language of the unheard and the oppressed. So
Yeah.
it's worldwide, and just communities that thrives off of it, making something from nothing. So
Yeah, it was big in, it still is. It's big in the Asian community here too in
hmm
Canada.
yeah. Yeah, and we gravitate to it because it's a low barrier.
Hmm.
To break dance, all you need is a smooth ground or some cardboard. To rap, you just need a pen and a paper.
Yeah. Oh, and just what is shared, you connect at that
Hmm.
emotional level as well.
Yes.
The universal emotions. Um, you mentioned that you mentioned your parents as an inspiration.
Hmm.
Get did they share their story with you? Like their experience
Yeah.
growing up in Cambodia and their time that they endured during the Khmer Rouge genocide?
Yeah. Yeah. The thing is, like, it would be sporadic. There has never been an intentional moment where it's like, hey, let me sit down, let me tell you my story. It'll always be some random moment where we're eating lunch or eating dinner, and something triggers a memory, or we're driving down to see family in Portland, Oregon, and something would trigger a memory. But my mom survived all 4 years, and her experience, because you think about it, Khmer took over the whole country, and certain areas were worse than others.
Hmm.
My mom said she was really lucky. The only thing that she experienced was starvation, but the brutality and the abuse, physical abuse and torture, she never was around it, or she don't recall seeing it. But she was always starving. She didn't have just never enough food. Um, my dad's story is a little bit more complicated because he was serving in the army, the Lono Army that was installed by the United States. So he would always have war stories, of him ducking or shooting, and just these random memory that I can't even put on a timeline of when it happened.
Yeah,
You just kind of hear
that
it,
was my
and
question. Like, do you have a
hmm
timeline of like their life? Like, I don't
mm-mm.
either, and I just only a
Yeah,
couple days ago asked my mom to share her story, and I have all these questions after she didn't want me to record. I was like, don't worry, I'm not going to share it with
yeah,
anyone. It's
yeah,
just for me and
yeah.
your grandkids, because we don't know anything about you and Pa. And she agreed to send
It's
voice memos,
important.
but it's not the same as having a
Yeah,
conversation. It's the best I can do right now with the voice memos,
yeah,
because at least she's sharing something. But
yeah.
I knew that the Khmer Rouge took over the rural parts of Cambodia prior to 1975, but she shared
Oh
with
yeah.
me that in her village it was 1970, and she was taken
hmm
away at the age of 16.
hmm
And I'm just
Yeah.
thinking, like,
So yeah, the Khmer Rouge didn't happen overnight. They were a
no,
communist guerrilla group that's been around since the 60s, right? Pol Pot went to France to study, came back, learned all that stuff. And then, they weren't powerful at all. They only had a few hundred soldiers, in different areas of the rule. But when the United States bombed Cambodia, they were able to use that as propaganda, say, hey, the United States are bombing our country. You should join our revolution to take back our country. And you can see how highly effective that was.
Yeah. But, and initially they were thought as to be the saviors of the country too.
Right.
Which is.
Yeah. Just like, yeah, I what I read I don't know which book I read. I read a lot of books about that area, but they said, they're Cambodians. What's the worst that can happen? That was the thought of April 17th, 1975.
I also want to highlight in other podcasts how you drew the analogy with your current administration. I guess back then it was the first time Trump was the president, but the analogy of the current administration and how the Khmer Rouge transpired. The whole thing is that they are twisting the story to
propaganda.
To satisfy.
Yeah, well, the thing is about fascism and dictatorship and authoritarianism. The playbook is been around since the dawn of history, and it's always the same. It's just is how well we resist and call it out is how successful it is. And as you can see, the movement here in the United States is heading towards that way, because a lot of folks, don't understand or haven't read their history that fascism and dictatorship will touch everybody. You're not safe. And if you look at the patterns of the Khmer Rouge towards the middle and the end of their reign, they started purging their own soldiers, their own family. So no matter how safe you think you're under a fascism regime, you're not, because they will come for you too. Angela Davis from the Black Panthers said, if they come for me in the morning, they will come for you in the night.
I have 2 more questions for you.
Sure.
Because we are an hour and a half now, probably my longest episode. But
thank you.
Well, you've got so much to share. What are 1 or 2 things? Oh, you know what? Before I ask that's usually my last question. But 5 years from now, what do you hope to do? What do you hope to see?
Yeah, I hope to see several things. I hope to see our Cambodian community here locally be a little bit more involved in our civic engagement, no matter what capacity that is. I would like to see a young Cambodian leader step up and run for office and represent this community. We've been the 3rd largest population of Cambodia in the United States for a long time, and we haven't had really representation in politics at the local or state level. Let me take that back. We do have Council Member Joe Bushnell. He's the first Cambodian to ever be elected in the city of Tacoma. He's half white and half Cambodian, good friend of mine as well. So he's a pioneer in his own right. But for me, just seeing people from our generation coming here as refugees and immigrants get involved makes me so proud. I would like to see that. I would like to see this community, just continue to thrive. But for me personally, I have a long-standing goal of being able to move back to Cambodia. It makes me happy to see the diaspora worldwide, when you talk about the artists from the Netherlands who moved to Cambodia to pursue his art. And then I know there's a DJ, Sambo I think she's from the Netherlands too. Just seeing folks going back and rediscovering their roots and connecting with their motherland, it makes me feel good. And I'm looking forward to doing that too. I'm waiting for my kids to get a little older, so they're a little bit, as young adults, able to sustain themselves. My wife and I, we do plan to set up a foundation of roots in Cambodia somewhere. So that's in the works, and we've been talking about that for a couple of years now. So that, and I just want to be able to go back and forth, and I'm still going to stay engaged with our local civics here. There's a lot of important issues happening in our community that I think, my lived experience growing up here has tremendous value and things to contribute, and opinions and perspectives, to contribute and include in the pot when decisions are being made, from our school board to our Parks Commission. So the work don't stop.
Okay, second last question, actually. What are one or two things you want listeners to take away from your story? You know, you have this vast amount of experience and you've dabbled in so many things. What are a couple things you
Yeah.
want people to remember about your story?
I just want folks to remember that whatever curiosity you have in life is just to pursue your curiosity, and whatever space you want to take up, please take up that space. And just, I think I move in certain spaces with a lot of naivety. I'm naive in a lot of ways. It kind of gets me through these things. There's a lot of anxiety that is to be had, but anxiety is just energy that your body and your mind creates. Just channels that energy, but just don't be afraid to step up and tell your story. As we discuss, I think the overall arching theme of people I talk to is like, don't be afraid to stand firm in who we are as a people and who you are and your background, and just continue to tell your story.
Mm. Okay, so if anyone wanted to get in touch with you, how can they reach you?
Yeah, the easiest way is to go on my portfolio website, which is just my name, silongchhun.com, www.silongchhun.com. You can, connect with me on the social media there. My email's there. Hit me up anytime.
Awesome.
Conversation. If you have any, inquiries or questions, I've done a lot of crap. I've done a lot of stuff in my life
You've
just
done a
because
lot.
I was curious about it all. So.
And you're doing a lot still, which is incredible. And that's why I definitely wanted to shine a spotlight on you.
Thank you so
Well,
much for having me.
yeah, thank you for coming on the show. And remember, Silong isn't the first person to touch on the importance of sharing personal and community stories on Khmer Voices. That's why this podcast is so dear to my heart. We're contributing to the archives of our stories, and storytelling is a form of empowerment. If you'd like to connect with Bong Silong, you can find his links in the show notes. Sam Akun for listening. And before I let you go, would you mind leaving a review on Apple or a comment on Spotify? I love reading them. Okay, we'll be back in 2 weeks with another episode of Khmer Voices.